And we'll get started now. So for those who don't already know me, my name's Lauren. I'm the marketing lead here at Unruly Studios, and I'm super excited to have all of you here joining us with Stacia. She's awesome. Stacia, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Stacia Wagers. I'm the librarian media specialist at Shenandoah Valley Elementary in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been in this role for 7 years now. I also teach professional development at K through 12 teachers too for my district. Mostly that has to do with technology instruction. So we have all been in the deep trenches with our teachers the past few weeks. We are slowly working our way to phase 2 of our e-learning. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on in our presentation here.
Nice. And Stacia, I actually found out it was introduced to you through Bill, who used to be part of ISTE. So
yes.
What's your involvement with ISTE?
ISTE, so our coordinator for library services and innovation in our district is the current ISTE president for our region. So we have been heavily involved in ISTE and incorporating the ISTE standards for both teachers and students in our district for those 7 years. The two of us started in our roles at the same time and have both been really passionate about how the ISTE standards can really push forward technology and innovation with students, introducing them new ways to collaborate with each other and sharing kind of globally what they are learning, which sometimes is a little bit outside of that box, but I feel like ISTE is sort of the pioneer on that education technology platform, and that's one of my master's is education technology. So foundation for me as an educator, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a part of our daily lives now. So I just want to give a shout out for those who don't know, Unruly Studios just launched a grant. We're giving away 2 packs of Splats. And if you don't know what Splats are, they are what Unruly sells. They are big programmable floor buttons that they light up and they make sounds. And the students completely control them. So they write the code that tells the Splats what to do. And the idea is they make their own active games that they can code and play. So we're giving away 502 packs to educators, just sort of as relief. We know you guys are working really hard to provide the best education for your students remotely, as well as maybe even have kids of your own at home. So really, this is just a way for us to give back to you guys to have a little bit of fun and some relief. So if I will provide the link in the chat to apply, but it doesn't cost anything. It takes about 2 minutes to apply. So if you haven't already, please do.
Yes, I also encourage you to do that too, because they are terrific and fun devices to do with kids. Just wanted to add my 2 cents in there.
Nice. Yes, Stacia, how long have you been using Splats for with your students?
We've had them for about 6 months or so, using them with individual group sets. And they are wonderful to code. They're very easy for students to be able to pick up and code immediately. And I love the active activity, being able to move around, instead of sitting at a table just coding in and playing a game and stuff. It's a lot more interactive than that.
Yeah, we're all about mixing STEM and play. So we're gonna go into a conversation about communication with students, with parents, but we first will launch another poll. How are you guys communicating with your students right now? Is it through email, through Google Classroom, through video chat, or something totally different? Let us know. How I'm not communicating with students: Facebook, Instagram, Google Classroom, Zoom, letters, phone calls, Google Classroom, Zoom, Schoology.
Schoology, that's what we're using.
Okay. Okay, Seesaw, yeah, I've seen Seesaw, Zoom. Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot. Blackboard, Google Classroom, Instagram, Flipgrid, that's one I've heard too. Email, Google Voice. Yeah, we're lucky that we have so many different technology options these days to communicate with our students. Okay, awesome. So let's move on. So Stacia, tell me, in your eyes, what are the best practices for communicating with students and parents right now? There's a lot of communication going on. So what do you
I
think?
think one thing that we learned in our district earlier this week, we had a survey that the district sent out to parents, just getting a feel for how they felt e-learning was going with their students. And I don't know if others here feel this way, but a lot of them said how overwhelming it was with the amount of communication that they were receiving. So as a district, we kind of stepped back and really kind of thought about, though we have all of these different options to communicate with our students and our parents, how can we kind of lessen that so it's not so much? One key goal that we're trying to do is just have one location where they find information that they're looking for. So for example, Schoology is our platform. Teachers are open to use Seesaw, Flipgrid, all of these other learning tools, of course, for our engagement for their students, but they wanted one location that you link things off of. And for us in our district, it's Schoology. Another platform I've used personally with parents, and this is my principal and I both go in this avenue, is using Facebook. That was the easiest tool that we have found where parents are really engaging with us in those short communications. So myself and the principal have both been actively dribbling out. That was the other thing we've learned too. It can't be like an 8-page website of all of this information at once. That's just exhausting, even looking at it and going, how do I get through this? So him and I have taken those larger communications and put them out in trickles and chunks. So it's not so much. And then referred to, if you want to see more details, please go here. This is really the gist of what you need to know. And then students in that communication, one thing we have learned, which people have skipped, I've noticed, I don't know if our participants have felt this way, but we needed that upfront digital citizenship piece. And as a librarian, you know, we're like the warning, please do this. And, you know, when it explodes and they go, oh, really, what do we do? So establishing those protocols, I think, is really important. The expectations that you have in a classroom meeting should be the same expectations you have in a Google Meet, you know? So we morphed our give me 5, which I'm sure some people are familiar with that term. Give me 5 now means give me 5 and turn off your mics, you know? And it's amazing, once you started, I went on a Google Meet with a kindergarten class. They all signed in, their mics were all turned off. When the teacher called on them, they unmuted the mic, they talked, and then they muted it back up, all by themselves, you know? So those,
they learn quickly.
They learn very quickly. We just need to kind of give them that guidance and push to utilize the tools the way we want them to. And then that lowers the stress, especially for a teacher that's not comfortable or hasn't used these tools before.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody asked in an email earlier when you sign up, you know, we asked them if they had any questions for you. And one of them was, how long can you keep students' attention for, you know, on video chat? And you had some thoughts on that.
I really feel like just how you think about doing a mini lesson in your class and you have all your kids sitting at a reading carpet, they're not going to be sitting there for 30 minutes. That's not our best practice in that face-to-face situation. So thinking about, even in those cases, I've seen some teachers that have chunked it, but really 10 to 15 minutes if you're going to be delivering out information. And then how, if you want to continue on that meet, then what's my next phase? We had a kindergarten teacher yesterday. It was really cute. They were celebrating a birthday for one of the kids, and they did a go noodle. The teacher presented the screen, and all the kids did a go noodle during the thing. We Are Teachers had a great article about a week ago that had 50 different brain breaks that you can do with kids. So maybe thinking about that, a brain break is something natural we do in the classroom to kind of break up learning and get their brains kind of moving and that sort of thing. Just if you're going to have longer meets, maybe start thinking about how can I incorporate these little breaks throughout the chunks of time I'm giving. Also think about getting permission from your students to be able to record those meets. So if a kid can't, you know, if a kid can't do it for that long period of time, they can go back in and engage and see what else happened. What did they miss?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, my own daughter has ADHD, so for her, she gets really squirrely real fast, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
8 minutes are up. She needs to move.
I think we all do. Even I take some little yoga breaks in between
Right.
work, and it's all different. So anybody have any questions, write us in the chat about communication, specifically with parents, other teachers. So if you're a specialist, or your role is more supporting other teachers or staff, how are you communicating with them? Yeah, actually, Stacia, how are you communicating? Because you support a lot of the teachers, so how are you communicating with them? Because I'm sure there's just like so much going on.
Personally, in my own everyday workplace, the instructional coach and I, we have instructional coaches in each one of our buildings, have a pretty good close relationship, just because we need to support and lean on each other in order to provide the support that our teachers, the curriculum, the students might need to make the whole environment successful. So we came up with a strategy a few weeks ago. First, we started by together collaborating on important information. When we started getting calls and emails about support, we had a go-to already planned. And if that's not something you have, maybe think about what have you used the past few weeks and how can you make that available and share that out with colleagues that might need help. But secondly, then we split the staff. You contact these teams, and my job will be to contact these grade level teams. Just that olive branch out. How are you doing? Not like, hey, check out this tool. This is awesome. You should totally do it. It was more like that compassionate piece. We work a long time in education about relationship building. Use those relationships now. You need them more than ever in this time of uncertainty, and no one feels comfortable. It's all out of place for us all. So now that was by email. Our librarians group, which is about 32 librarians together, we started using Google Chat because every time I looked at my email, I wanted to cry. But we still had a lot of information we had to share with each other. What was coming up? My teacher said this. What did yours say? How can we support them? So Google Chat was a way we could take all of that kind of communication and put it in one place. If I need to connect and ask my librarians, colleagues, what can I do? It's all here. So think about that even for your grade level teams, department teams. Maybe move out of that email and kind of think about something like a tool like Google Chat to keep you guys connected. And it's brought a lot, calmed the chaos as far as communication goes, I think. We
had a question from Lee. They're not allowed to use any video or Zoom or Facebook Live. They're only able to call or email. So if you have any creative ideas on how to keep students engaged, with those maybe activities.
I think I would wonder, do they have access to some of those collaborative programs like, Google Suite programs like Google Docs and stuff, or if they're using Microsoft programs. Microsoft also started incorporating collaborative pieces that maybe, even though you're not having that face-to-face conversation, having that ability to just communicate with each other, maybe, and I've suggested this to a teacher too, practice having one communication is just you kids being kids, because they need to be kids. And then having that other one saying, okay, now this piece of communication is just us being school. Yeah. We're going to do school here. But think about giving them that freedom to be able to, communicate. I think that's a way that you might be able to rely on some of your specialists too. Like your music teacher might have an idea of how you might be able to communicate. I'm wondering if the kids can record themselves, maybe using a tool like Vocaroo, where you do not see anyone's face. It's just audio. It's an old school tool, but that just works off of links, and maybe putting those links together and the kids can hear each other's voices. That might be a powerful thing. And Vocaroo is free. It doesn't cost anything. Like you said, it doesn't say this is Joe's name. Those are concerns that districts have. We want to keep those things contained. Or even
questions about Vocaroo. How do you spell it? What is it? I'll post it in the chat.
Like I said, it's an old tool. It's a Vocarro. I think it's 2 O's. I used it earlier today. But it's just a simple voice record. You go to the link, you press the red button, you start talking. And then when you're done, you hit stop. It gives you a QR code if you want to do it that way, or it gives you a link. Just post the link and everyone has access to it. There's no rights or any of that kind of stuff that's usually a barrier sometimes.
Awesome. We'll send it out in an email. We'll send this link out in an email after the chat, because thanks so much. All right, so we'll move on to the next question here. How do you evaluate or provide feedback to your students remotely? Every student's needs are different. So, how are you managing that communication and also just being able to support them and evaluate them?
Okay, so we are now working towards phase 2 of our e-learning. We started out with 2 weeks. April 8th was our first emergency closure date. And of course, that has been extended. So those first 2 weeks have really been sort of establishing like I said earlier, our protocols, what tools are we using, what does a lesson look like. We were told that we needed 15 minutes per content area, so a total of 90 minutes a day. I'm in elementary. That work looks differently in high school and in middle school. Their time is a little bit longer than ours. But recently, yesterday, we were told that we're going to move into phase 2. What does grading look like now? The grading at all of our levels is different. I can speak to the elementary level. We're not doing report cards this go around. That's been approved by our state. Every state is different what they're going to ask people to do, of course. But we were starting to talk about that conversation about how do we start evaluating some of this work we're getting. We run into the same thing which was mentioned before. Not all students, unfortunately, have access to something we're diligently working on, but we have to realize that not all can do it. So moving into that phase of looking at feedback, looking at rubrics that you have that you base your priority standards from, taking those rubric standards and looking at the assignments that you're giving to students and how can you provide feedback with those rubrics being your guideline. Especially, I'm sure most people are common with writing rubrics, but we have reading ones and also math, those sort of things. Like those are in your wheelhouse. As an educator, you know what your curriculum is. You know where these kids should be. How can you use that power that you already have to provide that feedback for the students and to kind of guide them? Also, personalized learning is not a new thing. It's been around for a while. Small groups is something we do with students a lot, especially if we have students that are struggling or even our students that are a high level. You can think about crafting something specifically for that small group. I don't want to put more work on anyone's plate, but you can provide enrichment at this time. That's possible. And for our struggling students, maybe making those small opportunities to be able to meet with them or get the support from your reading specialist, for example. If they're already receiving support services, how can we call those people in to help you? Maybe you don't have the time to make the lesson, but that reading specialist might be able to provide that opportunity that you can't right now.
Even just the support group that you talked about with your librarians in the, in the district, I like that idea. So if you have a specific thing that you're struggling with, leaning on your colleagues or your colleagues in other districts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We had one question from Charlie. Do you have any suggestions for students who don't have access to the web or have to use their phones? I think this is a reality for a lot of students right now, and districts are working really hard to get Chromebooks and tools out to students in need, but some of them I think are working from their phones. Do you have any advice for?
I would suggest first to think about the tools that you're having kids turn into assignments, and maybe those students that that's their access point, providing them an alternative to being able to turn in the work that you're suggesting. For example, an app like Flipgrid is very easy, user-friendly to use on your phone. And if they're responding to reading and you're having these kids turn in a Google Doc or what have you, or a slide and stuff like that, let's use some imagination here. And can we use a tool that is readily accessible on a phone and let them record themselves and then share it with you? Think about just making one special grid for those kids that's their access point. we make accommodations all the time. Yes, it takes a little creativity to make it happen. Google Docs and Google Suite platforms are something you can do on a phone. You have voice recording opportunities, so you can do text to speech on phones and even on tablets. We have in our district a variety of different access levels, and we know that some kids unfortunately still don't have that access. Maybe those are those opportunities, to take a time to talk to the teacher, the parent of the student, and the student themselves, and how can we accommodate your learning right now, because we want that learning to continue. We've honestly had teachers that have, I know in the Riverview Garden District, which is a lower income district compared to ours, they were providing students packets, which isn't the best, but the teachers had made packets for individual students, and then they dropped those off like a mail in the mail for the kids to be able to work with, and then they called and checked in and to see how that was going. It's not the best avenue, but it is a way to work around it.
Yeah, Emily also, her partner is a teacher, and she says that he's taking photos of work and then texting and emailing it to students. So that's and they handwrite their work, and then they take a photo of it and send it back. So while it's not ideal, the whole situation isn't ideal. It's definitely a workaround that might be able to help.
Yeah, I mean, we have students that struggle with turning in assignments. That's name of the game, and what could you do? In our district, we gave out lots of Chromebooks, hotspots, those kinds of things. But the kids didn't know how to take a picture on a Chromebook. So, maybe if you got to figure out what the knowledge is too, this is the directions on how you do that, how you can upload it, those types of things. Yeah. You got to figure out, I think those are great opportunities to kind of see where the kid's at. And, that means a lot to them. You're reaching out to them and they know that you care. And I think that's something important this time too,
Yeah, connecting, absolutely. And then the next sort of topic that I wanted to pick your brain on is how can we keep students engaged and excited to learn from home? So it's kind of, you mentioned you had a son with ADHD, and like it's hard just to connect over video. So how can you keep them engaged and excited to learn from home?
Well, as a librarian, I do have tricks up my sleeve, which are good. I think one thing that has engaged my child, for example, is choice. She likes the idea of having a choice of what she can produce. So like we mentioned just a minute ago, she can make a picture instead of sitting there writing something. Writing isn't her favorite thing. So choice is, I think, one level that you can look at as engagement. Also, as I mentioned before, thinking about those Google Meets, how can you make them exciting? Our principal actually is having lunch with with a grade level each day. So he's talking and sharing with them different things. And then at the last, I think he does it for 15 minutes. The last 5 minutes or so, he lets everyone unmute their mics and just talk. He says, just talk like you're in the cafeteria, and it's just, it's all loud and stuff. But, that's kids being kids. I come from a computer science background. I enjoy computer science, and I've always found that a great way to engage with kids, especially if you want them, problem solving and different things. And don't forget about those collaborative opportunities that we have, having kids create something together if they have that kind of access is another way that you can kind of engage them at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And how has it been so far for you? How have you noticed that you said that, with students' cameras are on, you can see whether they're engaged or not engaged, but how has it been going so far?
So far this is new to them. So I think the engagement is already there. The question will be, what adjustments do we need to make if we go on longer, which in our case, we already know that we're going on longer. And that's why they're kind of making those adjustments curriculum-wise to kind of engage students in the work. I felt it was really important from the get-go to make sure that I had quiet learning areas in my home for all of us. Sometimes yesterday, all of us were on a Google Meet. So that's 3 different Google Meets going on in the same household at the same time. I found myself outside actually to be able to do mine. But those brain breaks, I think, are also important. You know, I told my kids, we made a schedule as a family and kind of agreed and have stuck with that, where, okay, you're going to do this assignment and then we're going to stop and go take a walk with the dog or do something else to kind of, and then make ourselves go back and work, you know. And that's really kind of helped and kept them focused on the work when they are working. You know, they know this is the time I'm doing this assignment, and then we're going to go do something fun, you know, outside or that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And we had one question from somebody else in the chat here. It's most of their classes are lab oriented, and they're asking about how to replicate what happens in a lab with the new reality of online education. But I think this is also applicable to, you know, just in general, trying to replicate a classroom environment while at home. And, you know, do you have any advice for how to kind of normalize it as much as you can?
You can think about maybe doing a tool like Screencastify, where, you know, that's recording the screen that you're, you know, similar to what's happening right now. We're seeing a presentation go by and we're able to talk or produce audio with that. Think about maybe your labs. You're very comfortable teaching labs, I'm sure. You know, how can you make them remote? What type of flipped learning could you incorporate? Could you incorporate a video into that space and then have the kids do the activity, or record themselves doing the activity and turning it into you, or live sharing what they were working on? You know, think about different time slots. Sign up, use the Sign Up Genius. These are your time slots. My presentation is 10 minutes, or however you would have done it in the classroom, and then letting them meet, and it's structured in that way. That's how it would be structured in a lab, etc., in your space. But things like flipped and blended learning have been around for a long time. The difference is you have times to develop these online courses or this online way, and right now we're all kind of scrambling, right? So it puts us in a really uncomfortable spot. But different ways that you can record maybe as the kid is working, you know, through a particular lab, or, you know, some way like a flip grid where they're stopping and explaining where they are in this piece, yeah, and turning that part in might be something that's helpful. They get feedback from you, and then they know, okay, I'm on the right track, or I'm not, I have to go back and then try again. Those kinds of tools might be helpful.
Nice. And for parents who are, you know, like yourself, who are trying to manage work and their own kids and other things going on in life, how can we support parents with at-home learning now that they've sort of had to become, you know, the support with education in the home?
First, I want to say that I felt it gave parents like myself some comfort knowing that there was something that the teachers were developing that my kids were going to be able to do. And that kind of eased some of that constant burden on me entertaining them personally, because I knew that they had something that they were going to work on that their teacher is providing for them. So know that what you're doing, they appreciate. You might not hear that, but I do feel deeply that they do appreciate how hard we're trying to make this work. And as quickly, you know, these are interesting circumstances we're in for sure. I think that parent communication is important too. We had a parent that has several children, and all of her kids getting on a meet and different things all at the same time, and they didn't have the devices to do that. And what's the priority? And is this going to be graded? I mean, there was a lot of stress involved in that. So I think too, opening that communication to see with actually asking them, you know, on a Google form or whatever, how is this going? What times really work best in your household now? Is 9 o'clock really the best time for all this to happen all simultaneously? Or, hey, if I did this at 2 in the afternoon, would that relieve some of the stress that you have? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that might help with them thinking about their time management they're using at home and sort of relieve some of that, you know, stress. I know that that definitely has been a stress. Or maybe there's two siblings. The district only provided them with one device, and we have two parents that are working from home too. That's a lot of moving parts. And, can we be a little bit of adaptive to help that particular family out? Because I will tell you, they're not the only ones for sure. But also remember to remind them to take a breath. We're all in this together. I think that's such an important message to share, even with families, them knowing you've worked on those relationships all year, knowing that you're there to support them too. But I mentioned this when we were talking earlier. You also, I think, need to lean on those counselors that you might have in the building or at your district level. If you start feeling something like something's not right, they're really in a crisis. There are community support systems out there that are doing outreach that can provide devices. We have some great ones in the St. Louis area, for example, that we have contacted to say, hey, we know that they're in a crisis. What supports can you put in place for them? And in those community outreach places, they have reached out to those families to provide that support to help with the stress, et cetera. They are out there, across the country. I think we need to tap into those things if we know that there's a problem. And if we don't know even where to go, who is that person you even call? Your counselor is probably the first person to rely on that. But we should have an antenna open to that. If you got a bad feeling about things, you should really take some action on that, not just shrug it off, I don't think.
We've got a question from Jeff, just kind of specifically about Zoom. How are you sending out the invitations to kids or parents about like when is the Google Meet, or when is the actual lesson and connection taking place?
So we've had in our district, we set office hours. We have an office hour for this might be the time that you're connecting with parents by email, phone, etc. And then those teachers have also set their Google Meet times. Some of them have chosen to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, etc. at this time. On our end, I'm not entirely sure if you could do this with Zoom, but with Google Meet, you can just get one link and you can reuse that link. You're not required to make another one and that sort of thing. So some of the teachers have put it in their lesson plans that this is our link. Now, a caution, kids do have access to that link, and once you give them access, they can go in, So that is kind of a caution. If you want to control that a little bit more, then you might want to dribble those out. This is our link for our meeting today, that kind of thing, sending out the night before, adding it to your plans. We have not run into that problem, thankfully, so far, but I think it's just because I haven't figured it out yet.
Nice. All right. And all right, we're going to launch a poll. So how are your students connecting with each other right now? I'm going to launch it in just a second. This is the last poll, guys, I swear. I hope this is engaging and you guys are enjoying hearing each other's answers. So hopefully you can see the poll. If you can't, just write us in the chat. How are your students connecting with one another? Is it through email, through Zoom, phone calls, text groups, chat groups? How are they connecting with each other? Okay, awesome. We're getting lots of answers all over the board. Lots of text groups. Kids are great at texting. I find sometimes with text groups, sometimes messages get all garbled. Zoom breakouts. Breakouts are awesome. We use those all the time, even at Unruly. When we want to do a brainstorm or things like that, we do the breakout groups in Zoom. I don't know if Google Meet has something similar, some email. Nice. So all across the board. So I'm going to end the poll and I'll just share the results so everyone can see. That's really, yeah, kind of vary, but text group seems to be the most popular one, which makes sense. How are your students connecting right now?
That survey that I had mentioned that we provided to parents, that was one of the big things that came back. They wanted teachers to start providing an opportunity for their kids just to be able to interact with each other. So one idea we had is to have a playground or a recess Google Meet for like 15 minutes. The teacher can, start it or whatever. And then, my suggestion was to turn off their feed so they're kind of ghost supervising, make sure everything is going okay, and just let the kids interact and talk with each other. They've been using Google Meet for a few weeks now, so I mean, they have totally figured it out, so I think on our end, that's the thing that they have the easiest access to. And then that opens that sort of line of communication. They can see each other's faces and just talk. We were thinking about doing it as at the elementary level about small groups. As a teacher, you kind of know like who in your class is friends with other people, and can you just do an invite to a small group and let them enjoy, not like the whole class, because I think that's just too much. But in small groups, 5, 6, and have them be able to interact with each other and kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, texting is nice, but it doesn't have that that face to face.
Yeah, that voice is important. I think, as I mentioned, Flipgrid is another one that you could have a grid that was just for that kind of interaction, and let them put their emojis and all that other fun stuff where you go, oh my gosh, what has happened here? But I do feel it's important that we got to think about a way for them to do it. We don't know how isolated our students are right now. They might be getting outside, but they might not have seen a friend in quite a long time. And that's, for our own mental health as kids, I think that's important to find a way to provide that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any other ideas about what they're doing to connect students, or things that they've tried and worked or didn't work, put them in the chat, and we'll call them out and share them with the group.
Absolutely. I would love to hear those things too.
Yeah, I mean, it's new for everybody, so we're all just making things up and trying things as we go.
Right.
So awesome. Comment here, what are the most helpful resources that you're using for distance learning right now? Write us in the chat, what are some things that you have found really helpful, or things that you're interested in trying but maybe haven't. Write us in the chat. You've mentioned a lot, Stacia, like the Flipgrid. You've said, Google Meets. What are some of your sort of go-to tools? And somebody mentioned earlier that there's been like a lot of tools and they feel like it's really disconnected, but what are the ones, the core ones that have really provided you the most useful, information and helpfulness in connecting with people?
One thing I want to say that I'm sure most of the people that are participating know that they've probably gotten 101 emails from different companies offering their services up, or the premium versions of their services. I would suggest to kind of proceed with caution. Know that we want to also be able to protect the data privacy of our students. So even this tool sounds really awesome. What kind of data are they going to collect about our students and use for future things? Which is why our district has gone in some directions and not in others, just because they want to be able to have that kind of control and protect that data as much as they can. I saw something scrolling about middle and high. I apologize. I know I've been talking a lot about elementary, but I think in middle and high, there's this expectation that you can expect more from them, especially with online discussion boards that you can set up, Padlets that you might be able to set up. Padlet has more of an extensive, it's not just like a Post-it note service anymore. You can upload videos to Padlet, can upload links, etc. Like that might be a way that you can interact with a group of students at one time, and see that. Schoology, as we've mentioned, but also Google Classroom are ways that you can start a classroom discussion about things. As long as we make sure that we say, this is how you disagree with someone. Think about that. Should this look like? What is my expectation of you using this tool? So things don't necessarily get out of hand, which is always important.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned
lots of questions here, actually.
Yeah.
We've got, so firstly, people are saying they use Flipgrid, Remind, EDU blogs, Kahoot, quizzes, Blackboard tools.
Quizzes is good too, because you can kind of adapt that for your need. You're you're not kind of locked in. I like that one a lot. But
And
I do suggest, as you said, like, you don't want to overwhelm your students and you don't want to overwhelm your parents with using too many. I really suggest thinking about what your go-to ones are. As I mentioned, ours is Schoology, and everything that we're doing is linked off of Schoology. So you have some freedom there to introduce a Padlet or Edpuzzle or something like that, but don't overwhelm them with too many. And think about, don't assume just because we are dealing with digital natives that have grown up with technology their whole lives that they are going to use it responsibly or know how to. Sometimes we definitely need to provide that, guidance for them.
yeah, absolutely. We have Lee, he teaches special education and is still responsible for progress monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions?
All of our SSD teachers that we have in our buildings are posting assignments for their students on the board, on the Schoology board for their teacher. So for example, they are a collaborator on that teacher's board or a collaborator on their Google Classroom. And they are posting things specifically for those students so they can do their progress monitoring. Their check-in looks a little bit differently. They are hosting different ways that they're interacting with their student one-on-one or as a small group, which is how they conduct themselves when they're in the building too. It's a little bit more creative. Our district has some guidelines on what the expectation is for them, but I do know that our SSD service really has been working one-on-one with the district in order to make sure that that is happening. I know that we have posted some of that information. That might be something we can share later, what that looks like here in our district, and maybe that might give you some support too.
Yeah, we can definitely send a follow-up email with any resources.
Yeah.
Teresa had a great idea too. She loves using social media. Your teacher, PE teachers, I know too, have been sharing a ton of really cool videos.
Yeah.
And so she suggested even creating, for any PE teachers on the line, or maybe it applies to other teachers as well. If you can share photos or videos, on social media, kind of creating maybe friendly competitions between families to get active. Mm-hmm. I love that idea. I think that's great.
Yeah, we have one. We have two. Our art teacher does something like that. She asks for kids whenever they do an art project that she has posted to share, and then she shares that on Facebook. We have a battle of the schools kind of going on between two of the PE teachers.
Nice.
And, like you said, sending that video, sending that picture, and we're, posting it up and that sort of thing. So those are fun, creative ways that you can kind of use this time too. Yeah, we have a lot of competitive people in that department in our district. So we also are doing spirit days for our kids. The principal kind of runs that, but having a different theme or spirit day is sort of engaging them. I made an unlisted YouTube channel, and that's how I've been sharing read alouds with students, because I wanted to make sure that I was following our copyright and fair use laws in that regard. But that could be a quick way where you can make a video and share that link out with your students too, if you want to use that as an option.
Hey, Lauren, you're muted.
Oh, thanks for letting me know, Emily. So for those who don't know, these are Splats. This is them in use in a PE class. So you can see the code in the upper left-hand corner here. And the kids are totally in control of when they light up and make sounds and what they do. So this is a foot fire game that actually comes in the app, but it's being used in a PE class here just to get students moving. So this one only requires 2 splats, and it's a fun way to get kids sweating. So we do have a lot of educators asking how to use virtual lessons with splats. We actually just came out with a couple lesson plans using Midi, which is like a music language where students can create their own songs through splats. using virtual Splats. So if you or your students have access to a laptop with a Chrome browser or an iPad, you should be able to access the virtual Splat tray. And that's how you'd be able to teach lessons with Splats. Emily actually just did a webinar on this, Splats 101. If anyone's curious about this, write me in the chat and I can send you a link to that later just with more specifics. But you certainly don't need to have Splats right now to do virtual lessons, and they're free. But you know, to get that physical activity aspect, we're still kind of trying to find creative ways to do that. But you can certainly do the coding aspect without physical Splats. And I know Stacia is really excited to try the music lessons.
Yes, absolutely.
That Emily was talking with her about. So awesome. We have a couple. I mentioned the Midi activity pack, which is, there's 3 lessons I believe in there, but we also have Rainbow Keyboard and Splats DJ, which are also music related lessons. The Midi activity pack is specifically for students and student facing. So it's designed so you can just send it directly to your students to work independently on or with some help from their parents. But Splats DJ and Rainbow Keyboard is more written as instructional, where you would kind of go through the lesson plan with your students. So depending on how you want to structure it. Emily, anything else that I missed on that?
No, you've got it.
Awesome. And there's Crash. So the fun thing about the Midi lesson plaques too, I forgot to add, was if you send us your students' code and their song, then believe it or not, there is a member of our team who has a gorilla suit who will dance to your student song, and we will record it and we will post it and share it with you to hopefully give you and your students a laugh. So and us. So please do send us your students' code if you do this. I'll be posting
awesome.
a link to the lesson plans in the chat soon, or maybe Emily can do that, and we'll send it out in an email as well, so you guys can take a look. You don't have to buy anything. It's all free.
What a creative brain break that you can do with your kids, you know, parents at home or even teachers, just putting it on there and something fun. Let them be kids, you know, for a time. I think that's a great opportunity for kids to be able to participate in that.
Exactly. I don't know if they're still teaching recorders in school, but when I was in
Yes.
elementary school, I did the recorder and it drove my parents insane. So hopefully this will be not as annoying as recorders and way more fun, I can attest to, because you're controlling with code. So you're kind of mixing that STEM and also the creative side of the brain as well. So for those who didn't catch in the beginning, I did mention this, but we do have a grant. Emily, if you don't mind posting the link to the grant in the chat so everyone can access it. We're giving away 2 packs of Splats, just as sort of as a relief and a thank you to you guys for being awesome educators. You know, you have a really hard job right now, and we really appreciate all that you're doing. So thank you. We're giving it to 500 educators, and we're sending out the first of those winners of the grant next week. So really exciting stuff, and hope you guys apply. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Please write us in the chat. Oops, this is going to the type form. Last question here. How do you incorporate SEL remotely?
I personally, it's kind of the books that I select to share with kids. I really think about the characters and how they can connect with them, and that opens the door to kind of talk about deeper of those feelings. We Are Teachers, as I had mentioned before, as a resource, recently had an article about supporting social emotional learning with students, and had some great tips on things that you should consider when you're planning your lessons and providing those kind of opportunities where, you know, students can talk or share. In this e-learning time, to be honest with you, it's a great opportunity because those kids that tend to be quiet and keep to themselves, sometimes this opportunity to share online where they don't have that social pressure around them, it can be a great opportunity for them to talk, to be to share their voice and that sort of thing, because they don't have all those eyes staring at them, you know. Yeah. We have a 4th grade teacher in our building that said that she had some students personally, she knew they were kind of struggling, and she's done some separate one-on-ones, calling them, personally, or having some Google Meets, like I had mentioned before, with the counselor, and just kind of talking through some things that they were going through. And that has been really beneficial to them. But look for those opportunities. What resource are you providing, and can you have a rich conversation or a meet or a video, that kind of thing that will really engage them.
Yeah, some great ideas there. That was a big one that people were asking about in the email. Awesome. Some questions. Will we receive a copy of this session, of the recording? Yes, I will email everybody who registered a copy of this recording. So don't worry about that. Any other questions? Everyone's super appreciative.
Awesome. I mean, feel free to reach out through, Twitter, I think, is part of this presentation to me. And, any resource I can try to provide or point you in a direction, I'm more than happy to do that. And I appreciate this opportunity that Unruly Splats gave me to kind of just be able to share out what we're doing and, how we can help each other during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please do share, and I'll be sure to share those insights too. We might even do a survey too to share for everyone who attended here, but this has been really awesome. Thank you from Wisconsin, Lee says. Thanks so much for all your engagement and your questions, Lee. Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Thanks, Charlie. Awesome. Everyone's been really great. So I'm going to stay on the line a little bit longer if anybody has any further questions. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Thank you. This has been great. And there's more to come. Emily and I are going to do a webinar next week on going what we'll call Beyond the Mole. Whack-a-mole is a super popular game with Splats, and it's really fun. But, a lot of teachers get stuck sometimes with just playing whack-a-mole and don't know where to go from there. So we want to talk about how you can sort of go beyond that and do some really, really exciting creative things with Splats. Well, still playing whack-a-mole sometimes. That's definitely one of my favorites to do at shows. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Awesome. All right. This was for people still on the line, this was a fun assignment that Michael Furcano, a teacher in Hawaii, had shared with me, basically where he recorded his screen and shared it on Seesaw and created an activity, a Splats Relay Challenge, which I thought was also a great idea for engaging students with Splats virtually. Awesome. Charlie says, I got this invite from ITEA. Any chance you can find someone who's versed in this discipline? I'm not sure your question, Charlie. Versed in which discipline? In technology? All right, we'll wait for him. Any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Okay, technology and engineering education. I can double check on that and get back to you, Charlie. I think I have your email, so I will definitely reach back out to you. I'll make a note of that. Awesome. Okay, well, I think we're going to sign off for the evening. Thanks so much, everyone. Really, really appreciate the engagement and the sharing of everyone's resources. It really gives a sense of we're all in this together. And Stacia, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's
thank
been
you.
really awesome, and we'll have to do this again. It sounds like everyone's really appreciative of your ideas and your feedback.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone, and stay safe and have some fun out there. Take care.